Welcome to First. I'm Mark Eichman along with Michelle Polston. Shirley Min will be along with a story in a few minutes.
This week we update the faces of heroin and we report on the program New Expectations with the hope of helping victims of the drug.
First introduces you to an artist from Arden who makes custom canoes. And they're more than just boats. These canoes are masterpieces.
And while we are in Newcastle County, let's stop off to visit with the updated world of William Shakespeare.
First, your public media news magazine starts now. This is 32-year-old Samantha Moore. She was arrested July 21st in Middletown. She had over 500 bags of heroin in her possession at the time of her arrest.
This is Dustin Drew of Harbison. He's 20 years old and was arrested July 7th in his Sussex County home and accused of selling heroin. In June, the Delaware Department of Health and Social Services issued a warning about the increase in the number of deaths from fentanyl. That's a synthetic drug that is 50 to 100 times more potent than heroin. Health warnings, drug busts, and arrests are still being used to control the use of heroin in the region, but some other approaches are being applied as well. We begin our first look on the topic of heroin with Shirley Min.
The Delaware Department of Correction is changing its approach when it comes to addressing addiction and recidivism, starting with a new program focused on female inmates who are pregnant and struggling with substance use disorders. The program is called New Expectations.
I started with Percocets and then
started off small, you know, doing a pill here and there.
That addiction gets kind of expensive, so you move on to heroin. That's just how it seems to happen.
Heroin was cheaper and easy to get.
It just escalated very quick.
Robbery, assault, and conspiracy.
I did the burglaries to keep up with my habit.
You kind of lose sense of what's right, what's wrong.
In trouble with the law, these three women are not only fighting addiction for themselves, they're fighting for their babies, but they're not doing it alone. The ladies are part of a pilot program called New Expectations, a treatment program for pregnant women with substance use disorders, the brainchild of the Delaware Department of Correction.
One of the things I realized was that some of the ladies that were in prison were actually sent there by the judge because they knew she was pregnant, they knew she had a substance use disorder and addiction, and they wanted to ensure that that child was born healthy and that the mother attained sobriety.
A noble mission, especially since judges in the state didn't have an alternative until now.
The program's an opportunity for them to get treatment and get clean and stay with their baby and not have to serve time in prison as a result of that relapse.
Partnering with substance abuse treatment provider Connections, the goal is to interrupt the cycle of addiction and give these babies better starts at life.
The benefit for the mother is that she can be in a safe, healthy, nurturing environment that's much more comforting than a prison environment. And then she doesn't have the trauma of being separated from her infant at birth. And the benefits for the baby are tremendous. There's a lot of research showing that it's very detrimental to babies even later on in childhood to be separated from their mothers.
The women live together in a group home in Newark. We're not talking jail cells, but the women were sentenced to New Expectations, so they can't come and go as they please. The kitchen is locked and cell phones or cash are not allowed, house rules. Every weekday, the residents are taken to the Connections Clinic in Newark for required substance abuse group counseling. They're also required to take parenting and budgeting classes, to name two.
It's not a prison, you're not locked up. It's actually like they cater to you here. And I don't want to say that as being like spoiled or anything, but they actually fulfill and meet every need.
Tina Hearn had baby Noah in January. The program allows the 34-year-old to stay until Noah's 6 months old while she continues to work on staying clean and sets up things like housing and lining up a job once she graduates from the program.
You're getting help for your addiction and you can have your baby. You're not in jail and have, you know, your baby taken away.
And just like they would at Baylor Women's Correctional Institute, the residents receive full prenatal care. Erin Jacobs is getting an ultrasound at Delaware Center for Maternal and Fetal Medicine. She's expecting a boy in mid-April.
It might sound weird because it's like a program and it's court ordered, but I'm happy.
The DOC's Director of Behavioral Health, Judy Caprio, believes addressing underlying issues will also interrupt the prison system's revolving door.
People are coming into prison with some issues, and if you look at substance use as a disease, much like you do with, diabetes or heart failure, then maybe that person wouldn't have been in prison to begin with.
Having an alternative to incarceration also makes fiscal sense. 2014 numbers show the DOC spent $36,000 per inmate to keep an individual behind bars. Based on a full house, which is 17 women, that figure drops to $17,000 per resident, a $19,000 savings.
As far as recidivism goes, we hope that because of the bond that the mother makes with the child, she realizes that there's more important things than oneself.
Instead of making your life about a drug, that's what I'm gonna try different, make my life more about my family.
I've learned that I'm a fighter, and it takes a fight for you to stay, humble and in recovery.
You just gotta stay strong and stay on the right path.
Once the women graduate, depending on their individual sentences, the ladies remain under supervision. They'll also continue to get substance abuse treatment through connections as well as parenting support. The state has 3 years of funding to keep New Expectations going, but the DOC will do a cost-benefit analysis at the end of the year to determine the program's sustainability.
We continue our update on Delaware's heroin issue in our First Persons segment, where we're going to talk with Newcastle County Police Chief Colonel Elmer Setting about that department's use of Narcan. Colonel, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
As we get started, we're going to look back a little bit on a report we filed from Ocean View back in March. That was the first town in the state to have its officers use Narcan. The current heroin problem got its start with the abuse of prescription medicine. Then the problem got worse.
We started getting the overdose calls. We were really powerless to do anything until the paramedics got there.
Paramedics could administer Narcan.
Pop the top off of your injector. Your nasal piece gets screwed onto the injector.
Each member of the 8-man Ocean View police force gets 2 vials of Narcan to administer in case of an overdose call.
Take the top off of there. Just gets screwed into the injector to hold it snug. And then you're all set to administer the medicine. You put this inside of the nasal passage and just push up. Our job out here, as much as people might think, is just to pull people over. It's actually to save lives and help out the community. And that's 100% what the Narcan is for, especially with these opiate heroin overdoses.
So, Chief, Newcastle County started using Narcan in the spring. Give us a little rundown of I guess how that rollout's going, how many officers are trained to do it, how often is it used?
Well, we have about 38 right now that are trained to do it. We are seeking funding, obviously, for all of our officers on the road to carry it. We've already had 7 saves this year, and that's indicative of what, A, how large the problem is, and B, how many times we're coming across an overdose. There's been 88 overdoses this year alone. When we are immersed in a heroin epidemic, we are attempting to educate our way out of it. But each time you save someone, and some people kind of say, why would you do it? Why are you? Because they're victims. Believe it or not, they end up slipping down this slope of opiate use, and they end up in the heroin trade, and they're really not criminals. Many of them have nothing to do with any criminal element. They're just hopelessly addicted to heroin. Take us through Narcan, the use through the eyes of kind of an officer. Is it kind of just another part of the job now? Is there any kind of pushback from officers who say, that's not really, I don't really feel comfortable doing this? No, I mean, the training is very basic, and our officers are, this next generation of police officers they're multi-talented, open-minded folks that are not resistant to change as it was, when I came on a long time ago. Police, historically, it's tough to change, but not as much anymore. The more training you do, the more education you do, the easier things are to accept. And no, they actually see the value in it, and because when you are put into a situation where you can't help someone, that's probably one of the toughest things we do, that sense of helplessness when you can't help.
You mentioned the cost of that. Is it the cost of just the training of the officers, or is there a specific cost to getting and keeping supplies, keeping them up to date? Is there an expiration date for these that they have to be re-upped?
Yes, that's part of it. You know, the cost of the training really is minimal because that's built into our training, our annual training. That's no problem at all. The cost of the actual chemical is substantial, and you know, trying to have 200 kits on the road with a shelf life obviously is difficult, finding the funding for that. But
what,
you know,
what is the shelf life? How long?
I think it's a year, but
okay.
I'm you know, without checking, I don't want to give you bad information.
Sure.
But I think it's a year that they say you can keep it, you know, in the vehicle, and you don't want to go out there and have something that's past its expiration.
Right.
So, but we're very good at finding funding, and you know, we'll look for grant funding or federal funding and state funding to try and keep this program going.
And Newcastle County officers are authorized to use Narcan throughout the county, anywhere in the county.
Yes, and you know, like I said, in the short time that we've had this program, we have 7 saves already. So.
Really speaks to the issue. We contacted Chief McLaughlin down in Ocean View about just kind of get an update on where they were, and he wrote back to us on July 23rd and said, "This morning I personally responded to an overdose call. A female in her 30s was found unconscious in a bathroom, and paramedics were able to administer Narcan." He went on to say that several baggies of heroin were found nearby with labeled killing time.
Yes.
So it really kind of really is an epidemic in Newcastle County, but statewide.
It's the Eastern Seaboard. If you're actually you know, paying attention, it's the Eastern Seaboard. It goes from Maine to Florida, and I mean, when you see the governor of Vermont stand up and he gives his State of the Union address, and his State of the State address is about one topic. It's about opiate abuse. 80% of all the opiates in the world are used by the United States.
Is the problem growing, or is it sort of? Where does it stand? Are we making any headway?
Well, I think that the programs, whenever you're educating folks about how dangerous this really is, and you're showing them the road that they could be on, the problem with it is it comes with a stigmatism of that's not happening here. Right. And people, you know, they feature, you know, kind of a guy sitting in an alley by himself with a needle in his arm. That's not true at all. I mean, they're just, because heroin in Delaware is between 80 to 90% pure, they're just inhaling it. And some are eventually shooting it. They get to that point, yeah. And that's what makes it more dangerous, not just the diseases from the needle exchange and everything else, but other problems come from it as well. And ultimately, many of these people they never get out of heroin. They end up incarcerated or they end up dead.
Unfortunately, a topic we'll have to continue to discuss as we move forward. Newcastle County Police Chief Colonel Elmer Setting, thank you so much for joining us. Now let's head over to Nichelle.
Thanks, Mark. We're going to hear more from Colonel Setting in our next report. Ask anyone connected with the heroin problem, and they'll tell you the need for more awareness is key. There is a $500,000 public education campaign now underway in Newcastle County this summer. With more on drug education, here's Delaware education reporter Avi Wolfman-Aaron.
Thanks, Nichelle. Over time, there have been programs dealing with alcohol and tobacco use all the way up to marijuana and cocaine. Newcastle County, though, wants to target middle-class students in their heroin education efforts.
For whatever reason, Aaron tried it.
For the past 17 years, Marie Allen has visited hundreds of schools in the Mid-Atlantic to talk about her daughter.
I've been doing these talks and telling Aaron's story because I think that young people deserve to hear the truth about how alcohol and drugs can affect your life.
Aaron's story is horrifying. It starts with alcohol abuse at age 15. It ends with a heroin overdose at age 21. And when she describes Aaron's downward spiral, Marie doesn't spare the details.
While she was in Kensington, she sold my car for $200. She had been beaten, raped, and left out in the street.
Tonight, her audience is the 8th grade class at the Independent School in Newark. A private elementary and middle school on a sprawling suburban campus may seem like an odd place for this kind of tough talk, But the point is to reach exactly these types of students. Students like Rihanna, who left the presentation troubled.
What was going through my head was that the girl was just basically a normal girl and that she just was asked to take a drug once and then couldn't stop. So that's what it does to you. And she like sold her mom's car. So it was like really important to her to, that's how like it can ruin your life. So that was really saddening to hear that it can happen to anybody.
I want them to realize that it can happen to anybody. You know, we were just normal. We were just a normal family. Well, we've never been really that normal, but I mean, you know what I mean. We were just normal middle-class family.
Marie has done this presentation at least 1,000 times, she says, maybe 2,000. It hasn't changed much since she started, but the context around it has.
I didn't think this would happen. I didn't think a pill could start all this.
This commercial is part of a $500,000 ad campaign launched by Newcastle County in early March. It's the county's biggest anti-heroin education initiative ever.
I didn't think I could use a needle.
The imagery is intentionally suburban. That's because the demographics of heroin users have shifted dramatically since the 60s. According to a 2014 study, a drug once confined to the inner cities now largely afflicts white suburbanites. Many trace their addiction to prescription pill abuse, which can lead to heroin.
We're responding to middle America, if you will. We're walking into 123 Anywhere Street in Hockessin, in Centerville, in Newcastle, and it's very clear to us who's doing heroin. Very, very young, mostly white folks, and they're dying from it.
A 2012 survey of suburban heroin addicts found that most had little to no direct heroin education. Marie Allen has been working for years to correct that. With the help of Newcastle County and its new campaign, her soapbox just got a little bit bigger.
Life is all about choices, and we want to stress that one wrong choice can change your life forever. Thank you.
In the case of Newcastle County, the awareness campaign is set to run for a year. Perhaps you've seen the billboards on DART buses around the county with the hashtag heroin trap. There have also been community meetings set up by the Newcastle County Police. One is scheduled in Ellesmere on August 5th. What happens to all of this when the funding expires is still a question mark.
Coming up on First, building your own canoe may not be as tough as you think. Meet the man from Arden who can show you how and to be or not to be. That is always the question at Shakespeare in the Park. Is later in our First experience. On these warm summer days, there's nothing like paddling around in a canoe or kayak. What does it take to build a boat like that? First contributor Karen Smiles went to Arden in Newcastle County, and she's here to tell us more.
Thanks, Nichelle. Warren Rosenkrantz retired about 6 years ago. He made his first boat from a kit, but wanted to be a bit more creative. Today, he's using the skills and craftsmanship of years ago to build canoes and kayaks right in his home workshop.
I was born in Long Island, New York. When I was 4, I moved to upstate with my parents and right to a small farm on the Susquehanna River. My father originally had worked on boats at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and when we moved up there, he always loved the water, so we built boats there. He had a shop similar to this. We made cedar rowboats, and they were a beautiful boat. We would rent them out, and for fishermen that would come up to visit the little town that I lived in. So it was a very interesting beginning.
Wood has been used for boat making since the earliest of times, and up until about the middle of the 19th century, almost all boats were primarily made of wood. And just like most crafts from the past, the art of boat making is making a comeback all across the country, and right here in the quaint village of Arden.
From the early days, they used oak and they used all kinds of different woods, and they make the seams so tight that the water cannot get in through the seams. I make canoes and kayaks, and the canoes and kayaks are they're about the same size, except the components to them are totally different. The cedar strip boats that I make probably take about 3 months to make one boat. This is a single-person kayak. The difference between a kayak and a canoe is that the kayak actually has a deck on it that, if something should happen, the water comes in, it's going to go wash off the edges of the boat. This boat, the cedar wood itself, even though it's very soft, is extremely light. One of the things we need to pay attention to when you make a kayak is how light it is. Kayak people like to have very light kayaks. This boat already has a fiberglass coating on it, and when you put fiberglass on almost any kind of wood, it becomes totally transparent. So the beauty of the wood will come through. To do the plywood boats, normally it takes about a week and a half to 2 weeks of working on it, about maybe 4 hours a day. Canoes, we use all marine plywood, very thin, 3 or 4 millimeters thick. It's from a wholesaler in Maryland. I fiberglass both sides of the sheets that I get, take it to a guy, he cuts it, and I bring them back up here to assemble. They're flat when I get them. And then I take 2 pieces, scarf them together, and then we'll start bending the plywood and torturing it. This is about, I'd say about 1/3 of the way done. It's in between epoxying, between our stitches along the chine lines, which are along the bottom of the boat. They hold it together to keep its form.
Tell us about the boat that we're looking at. I assume this one is fairly finished.
Right, this one is 99% done. All we have to do is add the foot pedals to it, the foot stops, so that when you paddle it, you have a little leverage. So that's what these 2 pieces on the side are, so you can brace your feet on them.
This boat is all ready to go?
This one's ready to go in the water.
Hey, you made it!
Yeah. Same day, all in one piece.
Great.
Ready?
If you'd like to learn Warren's techniques, he does hold workshops and offers one-on-one lessons. You can visit his website, ardenboat.com, to learn more.
Karen, it seems like it's very rewarding to actually build the boat and to actually take it out on the water as well.
You're absolutely right, Nichelle. In fact, Warren told me he gets greater satisfaction from making the boats than he does from using them. And no matter how many times he's done it, that first launching is always a rewarding experience.
I'm really curious about the lifespan, though. Does it require much maintenance?
Well, Warren says if it's used recreationally and it's properly maintained, the weather won't actually do much damage. If it has a good fiberglass coating and it's kept clean, it could easily last 50, 60 years or so.
So that's amazing. What actually goes into making sure those boats stay afloat?
That's a good question. I did ask Warren about the possibility of the boat sinking. The boat is made of wood, and wood is porous. And he reminded me that the fiberglass coating not only protects the surface of the wood, but it also strengthens the bottom of the boat, which is important because when the boat is in rocky waters where the boat could be punctured on the bottom, that's important. And he did assure me that he hasn't had one sink yet.
Well, thanks, Karen. Karen's work can also be seen on Friday Arts. Watch it at 8:30 Friday evenings on WHYY-TV. Just tuning in? Then catch up on this edition of First by going to WHYY.org/first. Past shows are there as well. If you have Comcast, find us on demand under the PBS WHYY tab.
For more than a decade, the Delaware Shakespeare Festival has brought the works of the Bard to audiences in Wilmington. This year, they are performing Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew. To keep the play fresh, it's set against the backdrop of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. And this year's performance is performed in the round. So grab a lawn chair, pack a picnic, and let's head to Rockwood Park for this week's First Experience.
Delaware Shakespeare Festival is in its 13th year of operations. This is actually our 10th year being here at Rockwood Park. What we like to say is that we put on entertaining, accessible Shakespeare for everyone, particularly people that don't think they like Shakespeare. We know there's some people that come with Shakespeare phobia, so we do a Shakespeare orientation before the show to get people informed about what they're going to see and have fun doing it.
Brush up your Shakespeare and they'll all kowtow.
Oh, you are come to me in a happy time. There is a Lord will hear you play tonight.
We just try to make the plays fun and entertaining and create a real community atmosphere. We open up the grounds 75 minutes before the show for picnicking and pre-show entertainment. We just try to create a relaxed atmosphere. Last year, we gave the audience a choice of 4 plays to choose from. And Taming of the Shrew was the runaway choice last year for what play our audience wanted us to do this year. It's a kind of classic battle of the sexes play. We have 2 fiery characters, Petruchio and Kate, who meet and clash and fall in love, but have a rough journey getting there. And then there's a whole bunch of other fun characters along the way that complicate things.
Pray, what's the news? Sirrah, come hither. 'Tis no time to jest, and therefore frame your manners to the time.
There, Hortensio, will you any wife? I pray you, sir, is it your will to make a scale of me amongst these mates?
Mates me?
We know some people hear Shakespeare and think back to high school English classes and, reading it monotone with their high school friends. And, Shakespeare was popular entertainment in his day, and that's what we try to emulate.
For in Baptista's keep my treasure is. He hath the jewel of my life in hold, his youngest daughter, beautiful Bianca. And her withholds from me and othermore, suitors to her and rivals in my love.
I hope they have a lot of fun and they think, wow, Shakespeare can be really entertaining and exciting. And then whether it's their first time or their 10th time, I hope they go home and write it on their calendar to come back next July. Once people experience it once, they want to come back again and again and again.
But in all places else, your master, Lugetio! Tranio, let's go!
They can expect to have a great time. Look at this place, it's gorgeous. You come out and relax with a blanket, you bring your own picnic. It's just a wonderful night with your community and with Shakespeare.
This is the last weekend for this year's Delaware Shakespeare Festival. It runs Friday at 7:30 as well as Saturday and Sunday. Tickets are available online or at the door, and you can get more information when you visit them on the web at delshakes.org. And if you're one of our Monday viewers, mark it down for next year. You really shouldn't miss it.
Next week on First, we'll talk with Newsworks contributor Dick Pullman about Joe Biden presidential run. We'll also talk about securing our borders. The Delaware coastline is patrolled by this boat. And get ready for tasty crabs as part of a Delaware Today feature.
Sounds good. That is the first for this week. We thank you for watching. For Avi Wolfman-Arent, Shirley Min, and Nichelle Polston, I'm Mark Eichman. We leave you with some more of Shakespeare in the Park. Have a great week.